Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor. Today I received a tweet. It wasn't a tweet, it was a message I received from someone that said I should cover this Stephen Dieppe tweet. Now Stephen Dieppe, if you're listening, I don't know if I am butchering your name, but I'm still going to send people to follow your Twitter because you've been doing a great job. For those of you that don't, Stephen Dieppe is one of the better people on Twitter in terms of covering XRP and things having to do with Ripple. Go to @DIEPSANH if you want to follow him. I believe he tagged me in this to try to get me to look at this, but I just haven't. I missed it for the last few days, I think, if it's been up before today. But anyway, I wanted to cover this. This is something that I had not covered before. Before I get into this, I want to tell you up front, I believe that this involves a lot of the things that like CKJ has covered and covers doing his live streams. So he's got a lot of videos about this, I believe, about things having to do with the U.S. government and the payments task force and things like that. But this, I wanted to go through Stephen Dieppe's entire Twitter. This tweet that he did, it's so in depth and ties so many little things together. This guy deserves for my video today to be dedicated completely to him and this tweet, because he's put a lot of things together. It would have taken me forever to do this, and so this guy is very good for the community, and he really has put some good things together here. But before I go into it, I want to give you the overall on what I've always been talking about with Ripple and XRP. I've told you over the last few months many different things and reasons that XRP is going to be huge, and I want to give you those and then talk about this tweet, because what he's talking about here, I would say that everything I've talked about are really big things and big reasons that XRP is going to go crazy. But I would consider what he's talking about here, as well as anything having to do with central banks and the IMF, I would consider those things to be the big one. If any of those things, if XRP is ever used in conjunction with central banks of the world, the IMF, or the United States government and the movement of money having to do with our Treasury Department and the Fed and all, if any of that ever happens, then it'll be bigger than even I thought it could be. I mean, those are the pie in the sky things. But today I'm going to talk to you about his tweet, because this ties together a lot of things. It's almost spooky how huge this could be if these things are really going on. But first, I'm going to go over the things that I've talked to you about, that most of which are either happening or are inbound and going to happen, that are also huge in their own right. They're just not as huge as this if this ever happens. Okay, the first is payment remittance companies. We've gone live with some of that this week. That was the announcement at Swell X Rapid with a handful of 2 or 3 companies. Regardless of whether they're physically live right now, they're going live. Okay, and then Ripple is also going after the use case of bank-to-bank transfers, and I believe Ripple is also going after what I've talked to you about, which is a $5.1 trillion a day business, the FX, the money, the exchange of currencies in the FX markets, and that's a daily huge business as well. We've talked about Coil, which is the monetization of the web. Like they're trying to monetize YouTube and monetize Twitter, and being able to pay people in XRP across the web. That's huge. I've talked about how there are use cases, thousands of use cases that will be created now and in the future, and some of those will come out of Ripple's Spring initiative, where they're more or less creating an incubator and helping to fund companies that are going to be startups that create new use cases for XRP. I've talked about how Wall Street is coming, and this is going to be and cryptocurrencies in general are considered a new asset class. And for that reason alone, I have said, and I've been saying, and I will tell you again, I believe that if you take all of the use case things out of this and just talked about Wall Street coming, this being a new use case, and Wall Street knowing how much money there is to be made on a new asset class, I believe there will be anywhere from $2 to $20 trillion in this market, where XRP and probably the top 10 or 15 coins will rise with all of that, regardless of anything that happens having to do with actual use cases. I believe the hype around that and the money that will flow in. Yesterday I told you that Yale, one of the largest endowments in the world, is they've put $400 million into a cryptocurrency fund, into helping to bring about a cryptocurrency fund. And I read an article this morning where they have a guy there, I forgot his name, but they call him the Warren Buffett it's their Warren Buffett, who has, I can't remember the number, but I think when he came on, Yale's endowment was worth $1 billion, and now it's worth, I think I read it was it was either 8 or 80 billion. I know those numbers are a lot different, but regardless, whichever it is, it's huge. So now, what I said a minute ago, all of those things I said are going to happen. But what's amazing is that if the one that I'm going to talk about today happens, we hear about this 589 and all of this stuff for the bearable guy and all that, and everybody's arguing about that all over Twitter. But if this happens, if what I'm going to talk to you about today happens, 589 might be nothing. I mean, that's how big that this would be. And when I say the big ones, I'm referring to anything having to do with central banks using XRP, or the IMF, or especially the United States government, because we've been talking about trillions. When you start talking about the U.S. government in any kind of way using XRP, you could be talking about words like quadrillion. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm going to go over what Stephen has pointed out here and the things that he's uncovered, and you be the judge about where you think all this is going. So here's where it starts. He starts by talking about Executive Order 13772, titled Core Principles for Regulating the United States Financial System. Is an executive order signed by U.S. President Donald Trump on February 3rd, 2017. One of the objectives is to streamline financial regulations. Okay, so he's talking about how Trump's coming in here to improve our financial system. Trump, as well, assigned a task force to the U.S. Department of Treasury to report to the president the current regulations and their effectiveness in carrying out these core principles. And so he's put all these screenshots up, and I'm going to go through some of them. The U.S. Department of Treasury, a financial system that creates economic opportunities, non-bank financials, fintech, and innovation. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the things he's highlighted. This is the executive order. Tasked the United States Department of Treasury to review the Financial Stability Oversight Council, originally established under Dodd-Frank, and report to the president in 120 days on current regulations and their effectiveness in carrying out these core principles. Now, some of this you might find boring, but as you go along, some of these things will jump off the page at you. Ripple is one of the participants contributing to the report. Notably, Prosper and Credit Karma. Chris Larson is the chairman of Ripple, is a founder and of the former and advisor to the latter. So it shows you, and this is Appendix A, participants in the executive order engagement process. Prosper, Ripple. Then if you come over here, Appendix A, participants in executive order engagement process, LedgerX, MoneyGram. He's showing you all of these little things that are tied together. IMF is also mentioned. Now remember, this past week I showed you Christine Lagarde, how positive she is about the future of cryptocurrencies. Chris Larson, also a member of advisory board. mentions the Appendix A, participants in the executive order engagement process, International Monetary Fund. And then he goes on, cryptographic financial services, distributed ledger tech, and blockchain-based network are recognized by the Treasury. They also acknowledge that many of the current regulations, which are outdated, do not fit new technological advanced products and services. See? Okay. Moving along. I don't want to bore you with this, but as you piece this together in your mind as I go through this, it'll probably hit you the way it hit me. It's pretty amazing. The Treasury encourages banking regulators, I'll pull this up. Treasury encourages bank regulators to better tailor and clarify guidance regarding the bank partnerships, non-bank financial firms, particularly smaller, less mature companies with innovative technologies that do not present a material risk to the bank. Treasury believes it is important to encourage the partnership model to promote innovation. As for payments, Treasury encourages the Federal Reserve to move quickly in facilitating faster retail payment system, such as through the development of a real-time settlement service. There's that word, settlement service, that is XRP. When you hear the word settlement, that would allow for more efficient and widespread access to innovative payment capabilities. Over the past few years, many firms have either launched a payment solution or have publicly expressed interest in entering the payments ecosystem. Firms see a need and a demand for services that are faster, more convenient, and more integrated. As I read this, you are probably thinking a lot of the same things I'm thinking, and it's pretty amazing. Okay, there are three main barriers to entry and innovation. Money transmitters must register at the federal level with FinCEN. XRP2, a subsidiary of Ripple, did register with FinCEN to exchange XRP virtual currency. First, a business case must be made before a firm even begins to build and implement a payment solution. Second, the payment system in the United States is operationally complex. Third, regulation of payments is fragmented. Money services business is therefore subject to the requirements of the Bank Secrecy Act. They must register at the federal level with FinCEN, which XRP has done. The report also cites, this is what I think CKJ has talked about a lot, so you ought to go look at some of his videos on that. Ripple's one of the contributors in the task force in which their field's cross-border. And then here, this is interesting too. It says the Treasury uses an instant payments settlement system of ECB as an example. This shows they are very forward-looking to real-time payment systems. European Central Bank is developing they're telling the President of the United States this. The European Central Banking is developing an instant payment settlement system that is scheduled to go live in November of 2018. There are a lot of people that think Ripple's involved in this. Who knows? If Ripple's anywhere involved in any of this, and I'll say it again, IMF, central banks, if they go live with XRP and IMF central banks, the U.S. Treasury, any of this takes it to a whole new level. Okay, moving along. Let me see if okay. All payments going in and out of the UK must be cleared by chats, of which Marcus Treacher, a Ripple executive, is currently a board member. UK large value. Okay, I missed one. UK payment scheme is worth looking into more detail. It is the transition could provide an interesting comparison to the current U.S. payment system. The UK faster payment service was created as an entirely new infrastructure on a directive. The UK large real-time chaps is very similar to Fedwire and chips. So, and then it says next, Treasury as well as have an open eye on crypto assets. This is amazing. They use the G20 event to highlight the potential of this new asset class. Hodor did have a blog talking about the G20 event, explaining how bright the future is for crypto. Think about this for a minute. This is being sent to the President of the United States, Trump. Love him or hate him, it's being sent to Trump to consider for how we can improve our banking system. Interest in crypto assets from a range of financial authorities has increased substantially over the past year, as evidenced by the G20. Now, it gets interesting here. Coin Center is a not-for-profit organization that not only proactively work with regulators to develop a framework, but also bring better understanding of crypto to the public. And then it pulls this up, and it says, few participants in Treasury outreach raise concerns that conversations with regulators could be used as a reason to initiate an enforcement investigation. But he's making the point here. Look who is on this, Susan Athey, who is also on the board at Ripple. And she is he notes here that Susan Athey is a Ripple director, is also director at Coin Center, who's helping to try to influence regulations. Whoops, I just went out of his tweet. I'm sorry. Let's see if I can go back in here the right way. Sorry about that. I think I'm getting towards the end here, but all these pieces should start to come together in your mind. The report also points out some central bankers are considering DLT, such as Project Jasper Bank of Canada, both of which refer to Ripple in their reports. Some central banks are also considering DLT. And then it mentions the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Project. I mean, this is like crazy, the amount of things that are tied in here. Hyperledger. So you can, this really, he really, see, he asked for our thoughts here. And so, but he really tied together a lot of things in this tweet. And I think that this is really amazing. But the reason, and I want to explain to you, the reason that I don't cover these things much, the reason I don't cover these is because I consider these like, I think this is kind of like the ultimate. I mean, if everything that you ever imagined going right as an XRP holder, if everything went right, this is what you'll get. And 589 might be nothing. So I usually talk about the things that I know are happening in the here and now and that are imminent. For all I know, this could be imminent. It could be. But that's the reason I focus on a lot of the things that are much more imminent that I know are coming or right around the corner, like Wall Street's coming in November. We know that for a fact. But like they just said in what he wrote, the IMF is coming out with their new system in November as well. Who knows what that could be? It's fascinating times we live in. Okay, I wanted to talk about something else that I think is important. I have seen all kinds of nastiness going on in the Twitter XRP community and, you know, the cryptocurrency community at large. Many times when I'll do a video, somebody will try to find one little thing to pounce on out of my videos. It's easy to find points to criticize people, but I'm more of a big picture person and I'm looking at the overall. None of us are flawless. We all have our flaws. But I wanted to point out something that many of you have heard about this Bitcoin Ben guy. And I wanted to point out a bigger picture thing to many of you out there that are younger. This is a bigger picture thing in terms of life in general. And that is, I think that what this Bitcoin Ben guy did, and I'll explain to you what he did, those of you that have not been paying attention, about, I think it was a week or two ago. This is a guy, Bitcoin Ben is a guy who's a YouTuber, and I think he's a Litecoin guy. He is into Bitcoin, Litecoin, and maybe one or two others. But he's good at what he does. He's got a lot of followers, and he's an interesting guy. Seems like an honest guy that's knowledgeable about what he's talking about. But what he did about a week or two ago is he came out with a video, and he said that he got off the phone with somebody really important in cryptocurrencies. And the gist of it was that he was shocked that they told him that XRP was going to be really big because he doesn't like Ripple or XRP. But he did a very fair-minded video where he was, and I think that the people in the XRP community really appreciated that he was honest about it and that he was candid about it. And what hatched out of that is he has kind of come into the XRP community, and now he's kind of been able to cross that bridge, and he's got probably a lot more followers as a result of it, and he's been really nice to the Ripple community, and he's done really well as a result of doing that video. But what I wanted to tell those of you, especially you young people out there, is that what he's done reminds me of one of the most important books that's ever been written, and that is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because what he did is literally textbook straight out, and I'm not saying that Bitcoin Ben had this in mind. I think that he did it by accident. I don't know that he even realized what he was doing until after the fact. But what he did was he came to, instead of trying to argue with the XRP people, he came and listened to their point of view. And this, if you've never read this book, everybody should read it. You can go on YouTube and listen to the book, I think. But I wanted to finish by just reading you a couple of quotes out of this book, or three or four quotes that are really meaningful in life. And I'm saying these because not only of what Bitcoin Ben did, but there's a lot of nastiness on Twitter, and there's a lot of people who have been born into situations where they are by default extremely negative, and they see the glass half empty no matter what, or they're just into other things. But I very rarely try to get into it with people like that, because it's not something wrong with you, it's something wrong with them, and I don't get into all that stuff. And a lot of people out there are just trying to get attention, and they want you to grab on, they want you to get into it with them. But I'm going to read you about 4 quotes here, and you can use them for good if you want, or ignore them. But here they are. And these are all out of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. That's the first quote. The next one. Any fool can criticize, complain, and condemn, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. And the next one. Talk to someone about themselves, and they'll listen for hours. And then this is a long one, but it's a very interesting quote, and it's something you should think about in your life. Personally, I'm very fond of strawberries and cream, but I've found that for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I thought about what they wanted. I didn't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, "Wouldn't you like to have that?" Why not use the same common sense when fishing for people? I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. I hope you'll please subscribe and hit the like button, and go tell your friends and family to listen to my channel. Thank you for listening. Now I'm going to go watch football.